unforgettable memories. To nominate your rising star, register on the Foxtel website.
It's been almost 3 months since the devastating Grenfell Tower fire in London, which caused at least 80 deaths and more than 70 injuries. Since the event, building regulations in apartments, even here in Australia, are in the spotlight, and a lot of strata owners have been left in the dark on their rights and responsibilities if their building is found to be non-compliant. Lannock Strata Finance and Bannerman's lawyers ran a free Strata Fire Safety Forum last week in Sydney to help owners who were concerned on how to address potential hazards in their own buildings. And joining us now to talk about the forum and the takeaways from the event is Lannock Strata Finance CEO Paul Morton. Paul, great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Tell us a little bit about this forum, because I understand one of the panellists described this sort of flammable cladding, saying that it could be the asbestos of 2017. I mean, is the problem that big?
Well, I think that's a pretty good analogy, and I think that's the sort of thing that people can have in their minds when they're thinking about how to deal with this problem. When the first thing that we have is we know it's an issue of public health and safety. Absolutely no one wants to run the risk of having even one person die. And I think we could jump to the end and say, whatever the solutions are, this is going to cost a lot of money. The problem that people have, and particularly strata owners and even industry professionals have, is knowing what to do and knowing how to do things and how to approach things. Because although we have all the experts around, we're not yet to the case where we have a good project plan that people can follow.
So Paul, how well organised do you think the average body corporate is in Sydney, or even in Australia more widely, to deal with these issues that we're facing in this arena?
Well, I think there's goods and bads in that, Cameron. On the first site, the structure is there. I mean, the usual strata structure of decision making, where owners can form committees or do form committees, work out problems and make decisions, that's all there, as is the approval process in a general meeting. So at a base level, we're all okay. But the issue is we've never had one of these before. We've never had this problem, and I was about to say a problem of this magnitude, but one of the problems is we don't know exactly what the magnitude is. Now recently the New South Wales government sent letters to over 1,000 buildings. Well, I guess the first thing, if you don't know, is over 1,000, is that 1,100 or 3,100? But these are buildings who, from a desktop audit, they believe have some kind of problem. Now, to get a letter doesn't necessarily mean you have a problem, but it is certainly putting you on notice that there could be a problem. But it is a big problem. So 1,000 buildings, let's just take that number for the moment, and that's just New South Wales. These are large buildings, so they're going to have between 20 and 200 apartments in them each. Let's just guess 75 average apartments. That's 75,000 apartments. And there are at least 2 people on average in Australia living in an apartment. So we're talking about 150, perhaps 200,000, 300,000 people being involved in this problem. So I think those sort of numbers point to the fact that the Strata Committee, assisted by Strata managers, and even the general meeting, when people get together to make decisions, there's actually a large issue affecting a lot of people. Now, if you've got a letter, it's not necessarily the end of the world. In fact, if you've got aluminium cladding, it's not necessarily the end of the world. But let me give you something a statistic, which really should give people cause to think there is a problem and I must take action. And that statistic is an estimate by engineers in Australia that if you have aluminium cladding on your building, 8 out of 10 of those buildings will have the wrong kind of cladding, non-compliant cladding.
So what should you do if you get a letter?
Well, that's a pretty scary thing. And the letter from the New South Wales government outlines 3 things. Some of them are useful, others I think less so. The first thing they say is go to all your books and records. Well, books and records should be available, but it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and the books and records when it comes to fire compliance might be 10 or 20 or 30 centimetres thick. It's not necessarily something a layperson can do. But the problem with that approach is you don't know if that particular record or certification is fraudulent or not. So actually, a strata committee can't rely on the books and records. The next thing, and it's the thing which people at the forum talked about and pretty much said it's important but only in context, is to get your cladding tested. Now that involves ripping a bit off, sending it off to the lab. It might cost $5, $7, perhaps $10,000. They do a fire test and they come back to say whether it's compliant or not. But unfortunately, that's just the beginning of knowing what to do. It's possible to have non-compliant cladding, but if everything else is okay, for your building to be fire safe. But no individual strata person can tell you that. Your strata manager is not qualified to do that. They will help you, but they don't have the expertise necessary. That requires information from a fire safety expert, a professional in overall fire safety. Now, the New South Wales government in their second point suggested check that all the maintenance records are correct. Well, that's all good, but maintenance is only making sure that the existing stuff works. It's not actually checking that what you have is the right equipment in the first place. That's why I think the third thing, which is going to a fire safety professional, is the one which every body corporate, every owner corporation, every owner, every strata committee must get to as quickly as they can. I mean, this is not an issue that you can take a lot of time with. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about whether your building will work or not. And in the meantime, we're also talking about property values. Once people understand that 8 out of 10 aluminium cladding buildings are not compliant, now just be really careful about the technicality there. We're talking about the actual cladding not being compliant. I'm not saying that that's a fire safety. We will not know. No one will know until they get all those checks I've talked about done. But if 8 out of 10 are not compliant, very soon people with aluminium cladding of buildings are going to take a guilty, if not proven innocent approach.
So
and if your building is fair, sorry. Yeah?
So the upshot of this really is that you can't really, hide about this issue. Something you need to be acting on this now if you're an owner of an apartment in a building.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And hiding is something that people in strata have got a little bit used to doing. We've got this little problem. Let's not officially talk about it at the committee or the general meeting, because that'll put it on the minutes, and we don't want people to know that that's an issue in our building. That approach is not going to work with this issue.
Yeah. Paul, lots more to ask you about on this issue. We might have to get you back in another time because it's such a huge issue, as you pointed out. Thank you so much for coming on the chat to us today.
Thanks, Paul.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Cameron. Thanks, Bright.
Paul Morton there, Lannock Strata Finance CEO. We've got to take a quick break. Plenty more property news coming up in just a moment.
At the Coffee Club, we've loaded the croissant with full-blown flavours like our full-on Avo Feta. So you can get completely croissanted with our new loaded croissant range from $12.95. Where will I meet you?
Why should I pick you?
I'm liquid fast and relieve your tough cold and flu symptoms.
Really?
I work day and night.
What sets you apart?
I also help support your immune health.
When can you start?
Today.
New Dynatap Ultra Plus. Feel better.